They had heard many voices before, voices trained in academies, voices polished by fame, voices supported by money and opportunity. But they had never heard voices like these, the kind that came from hunger, the kind shaped by rain-soaked nights and empty stomachs, the kind that carried the sound of a city that rarely gets heard. In a narrow part of Cebu City, where houses leaned into each other like tired bodies, the day began before sunrise. The air smelled of salt from the sea mixed with smoke from early cooking fires. 3 siblings woke up on a thin mat laid on a concrete floor. Their home was a single room with a leaking roof and walls marked by years of struggle. They did not wake to alarms or comfort, they woke to responsibility. The eldest brother rose first. He was thin but strong from years of carrying water and doing small jobs around the neighborhood. He checked the guitar leaning against the wall. Its surface was scratched and one string had been replaced by a mismatched wire. Still, it was their most precious possession. The middle sister wrapped her shawl tighter around herself and began humming softly as she swept the floor. The youngest brother sat quietly with a notebook, where lyrics were written in uneven handwriting. Words about hope, pain, faith, and survival filled those pages. They had sung on streets since they were small. Sometimes people stopped, often they did not. Coins were rare, smiles even rarer, but singing was the only thing that made the world pause for them. When they sang, they were not poor children from Cebu City. They were voices. Real voices. One afternoon, a neighbor ran toward them holding a phone with shaking hands. There was news about auditions for Ireland Got Talent, an international stage, a dream so far away it felt impossible. The siblings laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because it hurt to imagine. Traveling across the world, standing on a stage where judges listened carefully. That was not meant for people like them, or so the world had taught them. That night, their mother sat silently as they talked. Her face showed fear and pride at the same time. She knew the cost of dreaming. She also knew the pain of regret. She placed her hand on the guitar and nodded. "Try," she said softly. "Even if the world says no, try." Days turned into weeks of preparation. They practiced every morning and night, not in studios but in alleys by the sea under flickering streetlights. People gathered slowly. Some cried without knowing why. Their voices carried stories that did not need translation. The day of departure came like a storm. Neighbors hugged them, children waved. Their mother held them tightly before letting go. Her tears fell quietly, but her eyes were strong. "Carry Cebu with you," she said. "Sing for those who cannot." The journey was long and overwhelming. Airports, lights, languages they had never heard before. Ireland felt cold and unreal. When they arrived at the audition hall, they saw performers dressed in fine clothes holding confidence like armor. The siblings stood together wearing simple outfits cleaned carefully the night before. They felt small, but when they held hands, something grounded them. When their turn was called, the hall seemed to grow silent. They walked onto the stage slowly. The lights were blinding. The judges sat in front of them, calm, experienced, unreadable. The audience murmured when the host mentioned Cebu City, Philippines. Some smiled politely, some looked curious, some expected nothing special. The eldest spoke briefly. He explained where they came from and why they sang. His voice trembled, but he did not stop. "Singing is how we live," he said. "Singing is how we survive." The music began softly. The guitar sounded fragile at first, like it might break. Then the sister joined in with a voice that carried warmth and pain together. It was not perfect. It was honest. The youngest followed with a harmony that surprised even the judges. His voice cracked slightly, but it held emotion that could not be taught. Something shifted in the room. Judges leaned forward without realizing it. One judge stopped writing notes. Another pressed fingers together tightly. The audience stopped whispering. As the song grew, the siblings closed their eyes. They were no longer on a stage in Ireland. They were back on the streets of Cebu City, singing under the night sky. Their voices rose and fell like waves. Each note carried memories of hunger, laughter, loss, and hope. Halfway through the song, the sister began to cry, but she kept singing. Her tears did not weaken the sound. They strengthened it. The youngest took a deep breath and sang louder. The eldest strummed with everything he had left. The guitar string vibrated like a heartbeat. The judges felt it. One wiped his eyes quickly, hoping no one noticed. Another shook her head slowly, as if unable to believe what she was hearing. They had judged thousands of acts, but this was different. This was life poured into sound. When the final note faded, the room remained silent for a moment that felt endless. Then the audience stood. Applause thundered. Some people cried openly. The siblings stood frozen, unsure of what to do. They had never heard applause like that before. The judges stood too. One spoke with a voice thick with emotion. He said he had heard many voices across many years, but never voices that carried truth so purely. Another judge said, "This was not just a performance, it was a reminder of why music exists." The third judge could not speak at first. Tears streamed down her face. She simply pressed the golden buzzer. Golden light filled the stage. Confetti fell like rain. The siblings collapsed into each other, crying, laughing, shaking. They looked toward the judges and then toward the audience, unable to believe this moment was real. Back in Cebu City, neighbors gathered around a small screen watching live. When the buzzer sounded, the street erupted. People hugged. Children screamed with joy. Their mother fell to her knees in tears, thanking God quietly. The journey did not end there. Interviews followed. Messages from around the world arrived. But the siblings stayed the same. They spoke about their city, their struggles, and their hope. They said their voices belonged to Cebu City and to every child who felt invisible. On the final night of the competition, they stood once more on the stage. This time stronger, still humble, still honest. They sang again. Not to win, but to remind the world that talent lives everywhere, even in places the world forgets to look. Whether they won or not did not matter anymore. They had already changed something. Judges later admitted that night changed them too. They listened differently afterward, more carefully, more human. And somewhere in Cebu City, new voices began to rise, inspired by three siblings who dared to sing beyond fear. The world had heard many voices before, but never like these.